How concerned do you think we should be about vaping?
We should be very concerned. So when it comes to smoking or vaping, there's the thing that's being consumed, the thing that people are trying to put in their bloodstream, nicotine, cannabis, et cetera. And let's just set those aside. I've done episodes on nicotine and cannabis, and they have their application. They also have their problems. Vaping is terrible because of the other chemicals that it delivers to the lungs. It's also very clear, and we haven't released this episode yet, but I talked to a female hormone doc from Austin, Natalie Crawford, so OBGYN. Vaping is associated with disruptions in egg health, and what they call egg quality can create certain mutations in eggs, and serious endocrine issues in women. Okay. Personally, I find it disgusting. Like, I just find it like, I don't do it, but when I see people vaping, like, to me, and listen, I used to, when growing up, I quit smoking a long time ago, but I used to smoke a bit of nicotine growing up. Remember, I was a wild one, but that's not why I did it. Nicotine works for me as a drug, and I don't do it anymore. But vaping is so addictive. It's a mutagen. It mutates the genes of cells. It mutates the genes of rapidly dividing cells most. So breast cancers, ovarian cancers, egg quality, sperm are constantly turning over. So, people always say, no, well, I vape all the time and I got so-and-so pregnant or whatever. Women will say, I have a perfectly healthy kid. That kid might've been much healthier. And also the kid's not grown up yet. Like, introduce me to the kid later. I wish for that kid. I pray for them, but that they're healthy as can be. But it is so clear that you're introducing a laundry list of toxins to the lungs, and they're getting into the bloodstream, and there are a number of them that cross the blood-brain barrier. And once they cross the blood-brain barrier, those neurons, by virtue of the fact that neurons don't turn over across the lifespan, you're born with the ones that you're going to die with. You might add a few across your lifespan, but you're mostly born with the ones that you're going to die with. Well, they're going to harbor those chemicals and those particulates. And yes, we have grandparents that smoked and lived to be 90, but those are generally the outliers. So I can't find one good reason why people should vape. If people want nicotine in their system that badly, and here I'm not recommending that, they would be much better off relying on a troche or a patch.
Yep. Because or whatever.
Or even toothpicks or injectable. I know people, I'm not going to out anyone.
Inject nicotine.
Oh, I'm not going to out anyone here, but I know people in our podcast community that rely on nicotine injections for mental clarity.
That is so hardcore.
Yeah, I don't. It causes elevation in blood pressure. It causes vasoconstriction, but it also will robustly increase focus and attention. As any smoker will tell you.
Mainlining nicotine.
Yeah, you're starting to see some companies that offer things like NAD infusions also offer subcutaneous or nicotine injections.
Going back to
patch or gum. Yeah.
Smoking for a very long time, everyone knows. Huge campaign, which I think was pretty effective, actually, at kind of discouraging people from smoking, or at least making them aware about the...
Do you remember how they got kids to stop smoking? They told them for years it was bad for their health. That didn't work. They told them that it was putting money in the pockets of these these old cackling white guys that were like rubbing their hands up in the boardroom and making a ton of money, and then it became the rebellious thing to quit smoking. That was the effective campaign.
So I think about this all the time, that there was a big push to both disincentivize and make more difficult smoking. You got to go outside. There's the smoking area. I remember I worked in clubs for 1 year before the smoking ban came in the UK, and then people had to go outside. Just friction all the way down, and then vaping came in. And vaping is way more enjoyable of an experience than smoking ever was. You can have a higher dose of nicotine that tastes, enjoyable, bubblegum flavor and raspberry unicorn dust and whatever. I don't know. And it's not going to stink the house out. You don't have any of the externalities of that. So I wonder whether we have ended up in a net benefit or net cost for public health from switching from smoking to vaping.
Yeah, there's an analog here with, kratom and opioids. If you really want to, we just got to put ourselves under attack by even bringing up the topic, but I did it intentionally. There are things like smoking and opioid addiction, it's unequivocal. It's just terrible, right? It crushes lives, destroys lives. Yes, there are those rare individuals who smoked their whole life, lived into their 90s, and okay. but they are outliers. So the question is vaping allowing fewer people to smoke and therefore improving their health? Maybe, if they're hell bent on getting that nicotine or cannabis into their system and they're opting not to smoke and they're going to vape instead, then maybe we have to be objective and say, okay, if they are absolutely intent on getting it in through some inhalation device, vaping is probably better, but we don't know that for sure. We actually don't know that. And then since I brought it up, and I really put the target on myself with this one, you know, I did a post about Kratom, which is over the counter. People will say it's not an opioid. It taps the opioid system. It taps other systems as well. And a number of people have indeed managed to get themselves off of opioids using Kratom as a bit of a bridge, kind of like the methadone heroin thing. But the Kratom advocacy groups are really growing strong right now because there is the possibility that Kratom will be made illegal in the not too distant future. And there is the reality that some people who were never opioid addicts have taken Kratom and then get addicted to Kratom. And then people start arguing, is it real addiction? Is it habit forming, et cetera? So I think the next year or so is going to be an interesting time for dialogue about Kratom. I have a couple of guests coming on my podcast. Maybe you'll do it as well. And I'd love that if you would. There's one thing, by the way, folks, that's so great about the podcast space. Unlike other professions, we love it when one topic or one guest shows up on multiple podcasts because it actually doesn't hurt any of us. And
sent me, in the last few months, you sent me Paul Conti, you've sent me Rick Rubin. And everyone's got a different flex, right? The conversation you're going to have with Rick or Paul is going to be way different to the one that I'm going to have, which is going to be way different to the one that Joe's going to have.
Yeah, it's a very different thing than academic science, than journalism of other kinds.
Zero sum.
The idea, it's a no scoop. They, you know, like in academia or in journalism, they say, oh, you know, who got the scoop? You know, or you got scooped, someone else put it out first. And, you know, in podcasting, it's quite the opposite. So I think the Kratom versus, the Kratom topics can be really interesting and important to cover. But I think, look, my vote is to not vape. I think I'm just shocked at how many people vape. And first of all, it's actually not unlike cigarette smoking. It's expensive. That's not the main reason people avoid it, but it's a significant expense when you add it up across the year. It's clearly addictive. There's no question about it. It's clearly detrimental to lung function. And then people like how it makes their brain feel. And they think that if they're already pretty active, physically active, then they can offset some of that, and they probably can. But I think in the next 5 years or so, we're just going to see a slew of studies showing that vaping is just bad for us, especially for the developing brain, because it's bringing in at a very rapid rate high potency nicotine and high potency cannabis. And you know from Mona Lemke's work, and we know my colleague at Stanford, that the slope of that increase in dopamine and epinephrine, adrenaline, and acetylcholine is so important. The sharper that slope, the faster the rise, the more addictive potential these compounds have. And so it's so far and away different than the kind of dopamine or epinephrine or acetylcholine increase that one sees with exercise or with cold plunges or with sex or with these
dancing
other things,
with
or
friends,
dancing and things, you know. So, and you know, one of course could be addicted to any of the other things I just mentioned too, but the potential for it is far less than something like vaping.
Here's my stance on it, that I understand maybe of the two evils, vaping is less of an evil than traditional smoking would be. But I think the enjoyability, the accessibility, the fact that it isn't as stigmatized, all of that, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if more people are now going to vape than ever previously smoked. And even if the difference between the two is that vaping is better, that the total area under the curve of public health degradation, I think that we've netted a loss overall for vaping. And you know, I see, dude, I go to a comedy show and I find myself going and getting an Escobar before, and I'm like, what? Like, why is it? It's just habit.
What is it?
It's like just a disposable
vape. So do you vape?
I do it if I go to a comedy show and I'm not drinking and I'm tired. So there's like a certain little decision tree that I go through. I'll do it maybe once a month, something like that.
What do you vape?
Whatever disposable, unpronounceable horse shit is available, or whatever's in my friend's pocket.
Nicotine or cannabis?
Nicotine.
Yeah. We're in California, so people talk about cannabis use pretty
not
openly
in Texas.
Here. Interesting. Yeah, I think rapid onset of these neuromodulators in the brain concerns me. It's just so different. Also with behaviors, you can titrate, right? You know, people say, well, video games cause a huge increase in dopamine. Okay, fine, but you can limit the total amount of time that you engage. I think with substances, even though you can control dose or number of what do they call it it's not going to be like a toke on the vape pen. What is it? It's going to be like a draw.
I don't know. I don't know the language.
Vaping, LARPing, cosplay. I've got that.
Good. I'm teaching you everything today.
Everything I need to know. This is good because I'm going to be able to navigate the internet
fantastic
better.
We'll get back to talking to Andrew in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Mudwater. Mudwater is a coffee alternative that tastes like chai and cacao had a baby. It's got 4 functional mushrooms, and with only a fraction the caffeine as a cup of coffee, you will get all of the natural energy without the jitters or crash. Each ingredient was added for a purpose: cacao and chai for a hint of coffee and hot chocolate-like flavor, lion's mane for focus, cordyceps to promote natural energy, and both chaga and reishi to support a healthy immune system. Plus, it's Whole30 approved, 100% USDA organic certified, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher. So, if you're looking for a delicious alternative to your morning coffee, this is a great place to start. Right now, you can get $20 off your first order plus a whole box of good stuff, including creamer and a free frother, by going to the link in the description below or heading to mudwtr.com/modernwisdom. That's mudwtr.com/modernwisdom. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip with Dr. Huberman, you will love the 3-hour episode that you can watch right here. Go on. Press it.